And nice to see you. So, it's another talk. We're all tuned in, ready to rock and roll over there. Anyway, I'm going to start anyway. So, we've had just a day and a half so far. So hopefully people are settling in. You know just how to work the toaster. You know how to work all the jams and peanut butter, whatever you like on your bread is. You know just what to do for lunch, your room, everything. And hopefully that you've got confidence that this is your retreat. We have 60 people on this retreat and a few hangers-on. They're not hangers on. Everybody's welcome here. And so when you are on this retreat, you get an idea of how this retreat works. The fact that it's very popular, that many people get good results, it should tell you something, that what's being taught here is very powerful. And it's how I learned from my teachers, especially in Thailand. I learned it very slowly, because I too had the idea that anything which was really worthwhile in life you had to work for. No pain, no gain. But it's really strange, that's not what happens in meditation. Even my first year with Ajahn, he told a simile, and he would repeat his similes many times. And then he'd move on to another simile, and sometimes old similes were not mentioned again. But the simile which I remember from my first months with Ajahn in northeast of Thailand, that was in 1974 or something, about that time. He kept on saying that his monastery, Wat Nong Papong in the northeast of Thailand, was a mango orchard. And the mangoes had been planted by the Buddha himself. And straight away, obviously, it was a simile. But there were no mango trees in that monastery at the time. Later on there were. And he said that these had been planted by the Buddha. He said, right now, that there's all those mango trees are mature, and there are so many hundreds of mangoes on each tree. Sweet, ripe, ready to eat. But he said that it's very difficult to get any of those mangoes from the trees planted by the Buddha. You can't climb up the tree. You can't get a ladder high enough to reach those mangoes. You may throw a stick up at the tree, but you'll always miss. You won't hit the mangoes. And even if you shake the tree, nothing will fall. He said there's only one way to get those mangoes from the trees planted by the Buddha. And that is to sit perfectly still under the mango tree. Hold out your hand and a mango will fall into it straight away. Now, you've heard me say that simile before, and I was looking for some place to include that simile in one of the books which I wrote, and I did include it in one of the books. But for many years I did not accept that simile. How can that be true? You know, in real life, if you sat under a mango tree, how long would you have to wait before a mango fell? And if it did fall, it's more likely to fall on my head than in my hand. To me, that was such a dumb simile that I rejected it. So I thought. But it's really strange that many of the things which I rejected, I didn't understand at the time, which I thought were just wrong, they stayed inside my memory somewhere. Maybe it was because it was taught by a great teacher, an Ajahn, that somehow or other it was stored there somewhere. Just like some of the seeds you see in the deserts in the middle of Australia. They get stored for years and years and years in the sand until one day the rain falls. These amazing seeds as they germinate, and the last place you'd expect to see a sea of colour of young flowers in the middle of the desert, you actually see. So it took many, many years before, in my own meditation practice, those things started to happen. That instead of I've been years and years and years trying to climb that tree, could never reach it, get ladders, even figure out, because I was a modern monk, get a helicopter, a cherry picker, something. But never even thought that Ajahn Chah could be right. Sit perfectly still under the mango tree and hold out your hand and a mango will fall. There's two things which were important there. Stillness, and you can't force stillness. As I mentioned yesterday, you can't hold the cup still. There's no way you can do that, but you can let it go and it becomes still. And that's something which I'm going to be teaching a lot in this retreat. I always teach this. How you get perfect stillness, not through effort, but by putting that effort aside. And allowing your mind to slow down, allowing it to go through the sleepiness, and then come out the other side with this very full awareness, but nothing moving, not doing anything. And a mind which is very clear, which doesn't want anything, so it doesn't do anything. It's just perfectly aware in this very moment, in silence, with huge amounts of energy. And that's the stillness part. But the other part, which Ajahn Chah mentioned there, to hold out your hand. To me, I didn't understand what that meant. But now, because I know just the importance of loving kindness, care, softness, gentleness, basically just kindness. Because I know that's important now. For so many years of practice, going the wrong way, going the right way. And you realize that was his simile for kindness. Just open up your hand. You open up your heart. And if you open up your heart, like opening up your hand, and you're still, then there's all these things you read about in the sutras, they actually happen. So this becomes a powerful teaching. Hard to understand, impossible to practice. I use that word carefully, impossible, because you can't do it. That's what the word impossible means. You can't do it. You stop doing things and it happens. You get out of the way and see what happens next. And there's always interesting stories about this. I love telling stories because these are real. What actually happens in real life. There's a story of the little novice. You've seen, if any one of you visited Burma or Thailand or Sri Lanka, sometimes little kids become little monks, and it's like a social safety net. So instead of having an orphanage or a kids' home, where sometimes kids can get abused, you read all about it in these articles over in Thailand. If, like, a family had too many kids or they couldn't support the kids, they send them to the monastery for a few years. They do little chores, do some meditation, make some, really kind, good friends. And then usually about 16 or 17, then they disrobe and go to college or university or something, get married and just carry on their lives. They had this few years where they could be in a monastery. And this was in Ajahn Chah's monastery where, I knew what was going on. And I mention this with the greatest respect to Ajahn Chah, that sometimes he'd give awful talks. And honestly, there's sometimes, oh crikey, when is he going to finish? An hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. It was really long. But other times it was worth it, because sometimes he'd just really just be so inspiring. And think, wow, that's worth it. 10 awful talks just to get that one good talk, that was worth it. But anyway, this was one of the awful talks. And so we all had to sit there You couldn't get out. This is the strict northeast Thailand Asian culture. You don't go out unless it's really an emergency. So anyway, there was this little novice was sitting there. It was like late at night, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, and Ajahn Chah was still going on about silly stuff, and keep going on and on and on. And that's when, like a little, 10, 11 years of age, something around that age, he started thinking, when's he going to stop? He told us about this afterwards. He kept thinking, it became like repetitive in his brain. When is he going to stop? 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 And then something happened. The nice juicy part of the story. And then he just changed that word around. Instead of when is Ajahn Chah going to stop, he thought, when am I going to stop? Now, a lot of time, like insight, when the insight which really just has huge effects, is just taking one word and just changing it around. Just seeing things from a slightly different perspective, which makes all the difference. And the little things where I tell like doctors, you don't need to cure anybody, just care for them. Caring is more important than curing. Because that's only one letter in one word. And it changes the whole scenario. But for him it was, when am I going to stop? And he stopped. What do I mean by he stopped? It was about 5 or 6 hours later he opened his eyes, blissed himself out for about 5 or 6 hours. All the monks had already, Ajahn Chah had left, everyone else had left. The talk had finished about 5 or 6 hours ago. He was just sitting there and blissing out, really peaceful, very still. When he opened his eyes, it was morning. Monks had already left for their alms round. So he was late for alms round. He didn't care, just closed his eyes and carried on meditating. He's only a young kid and got into one of these, what we call the Jhana states. So simple. He just stopped. Okay, now you all stop. Can you do it? No, you can't do it. I can't do it. I have to get out of the way first. And then those things happen. But why is it we want to do it? That's the problem. I'm telling these stories. I told a lot of these before, that once, I don't know how many years ago, when I was in Sri Lanka, in the south somewhere, giving talks, and I was quite a well-known monk by that time, and then I was giving this talk in a monk's monastery, a forest monastery in the south of Sri Lanka, sorry. There's some really, really, really nice monasteries in Sri Lanka, and they're very old, and basically, if I hadn't got myself roped into this place, that's probably where I go to. And I always encourage other monks and nuns to go over there. It's a beautiful place. It's very old as well. I still recall, I'm just nostalgia about staying in Sri Lanka. I'd only stayed a few times. But once they put me in this monastery, another forest monastery, just outside of Mahindarama monastery. That's where Mahinda sort of landed in Sri Lanka when he first brought Buddhism there. It's not maybe 5 kilometers, 6 kilometers away. And I could only have time to stay there overnight. But they gave me this cave to stay in. And it didn't have a mattress, just had a rock ledge. Well, I was really young, and no, not that young, but fit and healthy. I don't mind. I had a pillow there. I could lay my head on my robes. It was really actually quite comfortable. But the really nice thing about it, on the entry to the cave, was it's who dedicated it, the family who built it and offered it to the Sangha, and the time. It's something about 520 AD or something. They had it in the Buddhist age, but I'm just about 1,500 years old or something. And when I sort of went in there, I just wanted to meditate in there. Because imagine, 1,500 years, so people have been meditating and resting in this cave. his history was just so powerful. And you had the cave to yourself. It's only a small cave. But then sitting in there, whoa, that was really cool. Really powerful because just the history behind it. Yeah, there'd probably been lots of scallywag monks in that cave, but also probably some enlightened ones as well. And they've been meditating all that time. The history behind it, the power behind it, that really blew me away. Anyway, where am I going with this story? Oh yeah, down in the south of Sri Lanka, that there is a rule which we have as monks, and it's important, nuns have the same rule, that we're not allowed, we're not permitted, for good reasons, to tell you of any attainments or powers or anything we've really experienced personally. The reason is that, to make sure, imagine that I told you which of these 4 nuns had jhanas, which ones didn't. Then what would you do? Those are hopeless nuns, those ones. These are the ones we're going to offer food to them. And that's true. Because I still remember in Ajahn, I'll go back to Sri Lanka in a moment, in Ajahn Chah's monastery. I just got there, maybe there about 2 or 3 months. And the food, was. And I'm saying this because of all the places I've been to in the world, I've actually travelled to many places. The food in the northeast Thailand, unless you were born there and grew up with it, was the most disgusting food I've ever seen and had to eat. It really was. How many of you have eaten water buffalo afterbirth, the placenta? And soup? Boiled frog? And there were some things which I didn't eat, like bat's head. One of the monks, a good friend, he was in another place on Arms Round, and they had the rice there, and they put a bat's head on top. It was a delicacy in that area. Or a rotten rat. In one place, it comes to Eve province, they used to catch the rats and just on a tree, just tie the tail and hang it on the tree for about 3 or 4 days. And then it was just right for eating. That's no exaggeration. So anyway, but sometimes, Ajahn Chah was a famous monk, so sometimes people would come from town and bring some food. And so this one day, we're waiting there for the usual food. That's why we only ate once a day. Couldn't stand eating more than once a day. But this ute, like a pickup truck, came into the monastery. And in the back it was full of saucepans. Somebody from town were doing a dana, sort of celebration. It could be for marriage, could be for a funeral, could be sort of birthdays or whatever. And they came into the monastery with all these pots and pans. And I thought, wow, yes, I saw it through the window. Yeah, I'm going to eat properly today. And what happened next? It was almost like sadistic. It was. I was a young man, 23, 24 years of age. You need your food. You like your food. And giving up so many other pleasures, let's give me a decent meal. And the guy came out, so much food in the back, and he came into the dining room area, and he said, where's Ajahn Chah? And the second monk, Ajahn Liam, he said, he's been invited out today to somebody's house, for a dana. So the guy got back in his truck and drove away. And that was hard. I always remember that. Why? Because giving food to someone like me is just worth nothing. But give it to an Ajahn Chah, that's like more returns for your investment of karma. So that's how they used to think. Oh. So anyway, I didn't get into that story anyway, but nevertheless. That's right, yeah. That's why we're not supposed to say, who's, got some runs on the board, as they say in cricket, with some good meditation or some insights or stuff. But once, you can't say that to lay people. But there's no rule about sharing that information with fellow monastics or even with bhikkhunis. So I was in this monastery, hundreds of monks there, and they had a video camera of me. It was supposed to be a recorded talk, and Q&A time after the talk. And one of the monks in the interview said, Ajahn Brahm, you speak so much about things like jhanas, enlightenment stages. Have you attained any of those? Or are you just making it up? And they said, no, you can't get away with saying that you're not allowed to say that to lay people, because we're all monks. So no excuses. Ajahn Brahm, can you get jhanas? They put me on the spot. I know it, no way out. So what I decided to do, because I get frustrated, always having to say, I can't tell. So I found this way out, which I was happy with. I'm sharing it with you now. Because I looked straight in the camera and I said, Ajahn Brahm cannot enter jhana. Now, first of all, just like you think, hang on. I'm a bit of a tricky monk sometimes. What's he mean by this? And then I made this as a very beautiful point of Dhamma. So Ajahn Brahm can't enter jhana. Ajahn Brahm has to disappear first of all. I have to vanish. And then those things happen. And I'm not sure if I'm getting into trouble by claiming anything that way. That's my excuse anyway. No, I can't do it. I have to disappear first of all. But that also teaches something very wonderful about that little novice stopping. He stopped. And those things just happened. Really easy. So what's the biggest hindrance for you getting into deep meditation? You are. No, how am I supposed to do then? Nothing, and disappear. Learn how to vanish. Which is the hardest thing in the world. When you're at university or school, whatever, you were told to strive. And when you got something, you got your degree, you got a piece of paper you can put on the wall. Hey! You got a funny hat to wear on this funny gown. You know those gowns at university? Because I wonder, where did that come from? What type of fashion statement is that? It's totally impractical. I said, no, actually, it was very practical. When universities first arose up in Europe, that's about 800 years ago, they had to wear those gowns for dinner. And the reason was there were such messy eaters. This is no joke, this is true. There's so much messy eaters, young men with lots of wine or beer or whatever, and eating at the same time, that they always got their clothes, their suits, whatever they're wearing underneath, really dirty. So the gown, nice bit of cloth on the outside, was just like a student's bib. And that's absolutely true. If you do the research, and these days, of course, you get different sort of colours or different shapes of your bib. And sometimes you have fur on it if you're into that sort of stuff. And that's where it came from, just because students were messy eaters. Anyway, back to, where was I with this again? You have to disappear first of all, in order for these wonderful things to happen, to get out of the way. You ever notice sometimes when you're getting very peaceful meditation, Even on that question yesterday, I sort of get some nice bliss coming up and I start hating people and start getting upset at myself or upset at others. What's really going on there? What's really going on is we're addicted to doing things. And if you can't do nice things, you do horrible things. Anything. Obviously, doing nice things is much better, more fun, but it doesn't matter. If I can't find anything good things to do, I'll do some bad things. You just got to do something to almost like prove you exist. Because it's quite challenging to stop and disappear. It's something you haven't seen before or done before. But this is, I don't know if I should have given this talk this morning, but this is just what happens. You're sitting there, and I've given all the instructions before, you just sit here and just get your body nice and comfortable. And then your body disappears. You've had that experience before, surely. You can't feel your hands, you can't feel your back, your head's not there. You're just inside watching your breath or whatever you're watching inside, but you can't feel the body. And I still remember that one time when I was teaching in Singapore, and this guy came up after and said, Ajahn, what are you teaching us? This is really scary. What happened? And he said, I was sitting there and my hands disappeared. Is that all? Yeah, that was scary. I couldn't feel my hands. What are you doing? I said, mate, much the rest of you has to disappear as well. So get used to it. Because it's wonderful when you disappear. I don't know, I just got itchy nose this morning. I don't know why, I'm just scratching all the time. You know that you scratch your nose, but then you meditate, and your nose disappears. You can't feel it anymore. Yay, peace at last. Or, you got itchy skin, my arm itches as well, I don't know why. Or you got a sore tummy, or you got a headache, or you got a cough, or you got something wrong. Now, look, I'm looking at each one of you, okay? Every now and again, look at all the people in this room. Look what they're doing. Coughing, scratching, moving their arms, adjusting their posture, even blinking, touching their eyes and their nose. Sometimes it's very informative to see, just touching your head and closing your eyes. Hi over there. Why? And you don't notice that. You do it all the time. Rearranging your legs, just rearranging your toes, whatever you're doing over there. Scratching your arm, moving up your shirt. We do this so often, we've got used to it, we don't notice it. But why do you have to keep doing that? Kind of be still. No, it's just no. Unless you learn how to go inside and let the body just disappear. My body is never as still as or as comfortable as when I go inside with full awareness and I forget the body. Just inside. And then the body is just so incredibly relaxed. That's what I said this in the first talk in the morning. I just love that. Just teaching you guys and just what I say, I do. That's one of the troubles with teaching. You just do what you tell other people to do. And there I gave that story, I don't know where, somewhere recently, that one of those chants which I used to do when I was young. Now, even when I first came over here to Perth, and that chant was Metta Sahagatena Chetasa Ekang Disang Paritawa. It's like a spreading loving kindness and then spreading compassion, spreading love, sympathetic joy and equanimity to all directions, to all beings, without any sort of restrictions at all. And I know my Pali. I know what it means. So when I'm chanting it, I actually do it. You can't help it. Whatever you say, you tend to do. And so as I was doing the chanting, I was getting higher and higher and higher. This is really sweet. This is joyful. And then you bliss out. I stopped chanting. You can't. So every time I do that chant, it would just hit me so hard. I'd only get through the first half of the 4 verses. And that was it. I was gone. Brilliant, beautiful. Because what you say has power. If you teach other people, you do it yourself. That's one of the problems. Meditating and being a meditation teacher. You start saying, how does your body feel? Just blissed out. And my body was blissed out. And I just want to forget about you, sorry. You don't know the sacrifices I make for you. Sound like your mum or your dad. But anyway, that's what it feels like. And it's just gorgeous. Your body starts to vanish and disappear. But what I was concerned about, why are people afraid of that? Why does your hands disappear? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with, when your whole body vanishes? You can't feel your legs. When you come out of meditation, your legs are fine. They're more fine than they were before. And I said that's where you get people overcoming their sicknesses. And that time when I had the typhus fever in Thailand, the typhus fever joke. It's not a joke, actually. This is a true story. But it's funny. Because I laugh at it. Because there you were, first year or two in Thailand, got the fever. When you got a fever in northeast of Thailand, it was so bad you have to go to hospital. And you went into the hospital, they put a drip in your arm. And they, when you're a forest monk, I used to give blood over in Thailand. And when you give blood, they just give it a little injection, and then they, local anaesthetic, and then they put the thing in. When I went to give blood in Thailand, I said, you're a forest monk, you can deal with pain. And they just put the thing in without any anaesthetic. Thank you very much. So you're supposed to be the tough ones. So anyway, anaesthetic, not an anaesthetic, a drip in my arm, in a bed, feeling really sick. And I didn't know it was scrub typhus, because officially there was no scrub typhus in that part of Thailand. Of course there wasn't, because the locals had immunity. They've grown up with it, so they never got infected. The Westerners, we didn't have that immunity, so usually we all got it sooner or later. And so because they don't know what it is, and they didn't even test for it because it didn't exist, but of course it did, then they give you all sorts of antibiotics. But even worse than that, the first night in the monks' ward of Ubon Hospital in 1975 or something, there's about 6 beds on either side of this long ward, and monks in all different parts of decomposition, dying, sickness, or whatever. Very rudimentary healthcare. More rudimentary than I wanted, because at 6 p.m. the night nurse vanished. 7 p.m. At 6 p.m. the only nurse vanished, and 7 p.m. the night nurse hadn't arrived. 8 p.m. still hadn't turned up. And I talked to the monk in the next bed. Shall we call the authorities? The night nurse hasn't come this evening. And the monk in the next bed looked at me and said, night nurse? There is no night nurse. You had 12 really sick monks. If anything happened in the middle of the night, that's just unlucky karma. Even though I was a Buddhist, that was not reassuring at all. And then in the morning, the nurse came. The nurse came to inject me with antibiotics. Didn't know what she was giving me. On your front, you just pulled my robe down and in the backside, twice a day. Now you think that's nothing, But you should have seen those needles, if you want to call them needles, in those days. They were so blunt. Those were the times, not just one-use needles. They were recycled, first of all in Bangkok, and then up to the richer hospitals. And the last was this hospital in the northeast. And the last was the monks, with the tough ones. So those needles were so blunt that the nurse never injected you. Stabbed. That's what it was. Oh, that really hurt. Twice a day. Oh, my bottom was so sore after a week. I was there for about 4 weeks, I think. Oh. And the reason I tell this story was that I've never been so low energy, so close to death probably, as there. You have absolutely zero energy. To go to the toilet, no bedpans. You have to sort of somehow find some energy to stand up, hold on to the end of the bed for about 5 minutes, and then lurch to the next bed. And then regain your energy. When you did get to the toilet, you stayed there a long time. You didn't want to make that expedition. It's like climbing the Alps. More than 2 times a day. But anyway, I got so low energy. Not really depressed, but kind of depressed. What am I doing this for? It's like what somebody asked about that nibbida. That's the sort of thing which comes up, nibbida. What am I doing this for? This doesn't make any sense. So I just closed my eyes and meditated. That's what I was. I was a meditation monk, so let's do it. So I just lay down there feeling really, really terrible with a fever and just no energy. And one of the reasons I say this was because the posture. You know, when you meditate, you're supposed to sit nice and straight with your legs crossed, one hand in front of the other, back straight, eyes closed. My posture was nothing like that. Had one leg that direction, another leg the other direction, an arm over here, an arm over there. Have you ever seen someone sick in bed in hospital? Their posture's all over the place. That was my posture. And you got this lovely meditation. The body vanished. Isn't that wonderful? When the body really hurts, it's got a fever, it aches. If ever you've been in the hospital for a long while, how do your body feel? Oh, terrible. And just go inside and blissing out inside. What a wonderful thing that is. And so the comparison, just with a normal state, a healthy state of body, just going into the deep states, whoa, that really blisses you out and you're walking on air afterwards. But no, this was compared to a really very, very sick body. And afterwards, you were just really even blissing out after you came out. I never really noticed at the time, but I'm pretty sure this was true. That would be where the illness stopped, where the fever vanished. That's what happens in these deep meditation states. They have some incredible power over your bodily health. How it works, I don't know, honestly. That it works, I do know. I've seen it too many times. So, you have nothing to be afraid of when you get into deep meditation. So, your body starts to vanish. Bring it on. Yeah, let's have some. Well, don't be afraid. The benefits are just so amazing. So, you're sitting there. Your body vanishes, you're inside. That's pretty good. And then you've got, what else has to vanish? Time. How many days have we been on this retreat? How many hours? How many days are left? Forget that. The only bit of time you need to worry about is breakfast and lunch. And it's a strange thing. You don't really need to have a clock for that, even if you're not in here. Sometimes it's breakfast. It's lunch. You don't know the time to get up for morning chanting. But you know the time to get up for breakfast. Well, look, if some of you have got over to, say, Bodhinyana Monastery, if you go there in the afternoon, in front of the kitchen, how many birds are there? How many parrots and kookaburras and magpies are there? In the afternoon, 3 o'clock, there's hardly anything there. You go there at 10:30 and it's teeming with birds. They know when lunchtime is. And they always come around that time. They get something to eat and then they just disappear afterwards. So, but do those animals have an iPhone? I've never seen a parrot with an iPhone. They know. So that's the only thing with time you need to worry about. But the rest of it, how many of you worry about how long you're meditating for? And try and improve on your PB, your personal best. That is total ridiculous idiocy. It's not the time. You try and escape from time, just like you escape from the body. Allow it to vanish. So you haven't got a clue what the time is or how long you've been meditating for. You're just enjoying it. And carry on. The timeless meditations. How much of a prisoner are you of time? All the stuff which you've done in the past. Some really nice stuff, some really awful stuff you've done. Who did it? Was it you? Or this little girl years and years and years ago? Why do people own their past? You can let go of many other things. You can put many of your possessions in the recycling bins. Wouldn't it be wonderful if every local authority, council had a recycling bin for the past? So every week you can put your past in one of those bins and it gets taken to the tip or taken to recycle somewhere, and you can really let it go. Would that be neat? So your past is gone. Woo, free. That's what we do here. Let go. People say, no, you learn from the past. Yeah, sure. You learn from the present, not from the past. You just get burdened by the past. You get warped by the past. You don't learn from it. This present moment, you learn a lot from this. In this moment, right here, right now. What's it like being here? I don't mean sort of in Jhana growth. I mean in this moment, right here where you are, in your body, right now. This is unique. It's never been like this before, and never be like this afterwards. And right now is all that you can say you own. You don't really own it, but it's all you have. Kindly respect it, this present moment, and learn from this, and be with it. And how do you learn anyway? When I was at school, obviously I've been doing this a long time, even in primary school. I remember the general knowledge competition. I was smart even in primary school. So I remember sometimes they would ask questions, and I was sometimes the only one who knew the answer. I'm mentioning that because that was true. Just like that kid who came home from school one day, and his dad asked, how did it go at school today? And he said, today teacher asked a question. I was the only student in the whole class who knew the right answer. And he's usually a very naughty kid. I mean, you're the only one who knew the right answer? Yes, sir, he told his dad. His dad took out a $20 note. I'm proud of you, here's $20. And as the kid was going outside the door of the house to spend the $20, the father asked, what was the question? Who broke that window? I knew the right answer, it was me. That's a joke. But sometimes, when you're learning, when a teacher is telling you something, even if it's maths or French or something, if you are a quiet mind and you're really mindful, you soak it in. You don't even try to remember. If I try to remember, I must remember this is really important. Just that saying, I've got to remember this, it's really important. I'm not listening anymore. This is that power of silence. And best illustrated by that story. I tell this story every retreat because it's the most powerful I've known, with why you should shut up inside and listen to this present moment and learn from it. About the Taoist master Lao Tzu going with a disciple for a walk. They have a walk every evening with the disciple, with the master, but you had to keep silence. No one was allowed to talk during the walk with the master. And then this one evening, there was a new student went on a walk with Lao Tzu, and they came to a ridge in the mountains, and there was this incredible sunset. It was gorgeous. And the student forgot the rule and said to the master, "Wow, what an amazingly beautiful sunset." And the master just turned around and walked back to the monastery. When he got back to the monastery, then the master had to keep the rules he gives to others. Then he said to that student, "Now we're back in the monastery, I can speak again. You're never allowed to go on a walk with me ever again. You broke the rule." I said, "Oh, it's only a small sentence. Just what a beautiful..." What's wrong with that? And that's where the teacher, Lao Tzu, replied, "When my student said, 'What a beautiful sunset,' he was not watching the sunset anymore. He was watching the words." Did you get that? That's so amazing. You say, "What a beautiful sunset," you're not watching the sunset anymore. You're watching the description. Just one level away from just being mindful and enjoying. You're trying to capture it with words. You're trying to photograph it. Trying to remember it. Then you're not experiencing it. So, it's one of the reasons why on this retreat, if you think, "I can't meditate, I'm tired," go for a walk. As you're going for a walk, listen and look and feel, but don't say anything, outside or inside. You see so much more in this forest when you're not trying to describe it. You have much more of an adventure when you're not making a plan. What are you going to do next? You have much more feeling of the heat of the day, or so many sounds in the forest when you're not thinking. It's in silence you learn in this moment. So I used to teach that to kids at school. If you really want to learn, shh, be still. Trust your brain will soak up the information. You don't need to force it to remember. You let it remember. Let it be like a dry sponge which soaks up, rather than a wet sponge which is always trying to print something and put it in notes. Be silent. And of course, because people are tired, the first teaching I gave here was, if you need to sleep, sleep. Otherwise, what happens, and you've probably done this already because you're too embarrassed to sleep and catch up on your sleep deficit. If you are paid off your sleep debt and you meditate, you feel so good. You get quiet and get peaceful. But the brain doesn't take over and send you to sleep. The only reason why you do get dull in meditation is because you're letting go of a bit of control. And your brain says, "Great, now at least I can catch up on 5 minutes and be dull." But if you're comfortable, you had a good sleep, you're not sick, and you sit down, then when you get quiet, sloth and torpor doesn't come up. It's just not there. Instead, joy and happiness. Peaceful. Who wants to go to sleep or be dull when you're having such a wonderful time? I don't know how many of you like classical music, but just before I became a monk, there was the music which I used to listen to most of all. And I don't know if anybody likes this music, but I used to love Monteverdi. Beautiful music. But when I used to play that, I didn't understand why I enjoyed it so much until later on when I became a monk and meditated more. I realized whenever I listened to good classical music, I couldn't think. My mind was still. I couldn't comment until after it was all finished. Imagine you were in a concert hall and you heard some great music. You turned around to your partner and said, "Oh, that was really good violinist there, wasn't it?" You get thrown out for making a noise and interrupting other people enjoying the music. You have to be silent to hear every chord which is played, to hear the whole symphony. That's one of the reasons why it was enjoyable. That's one of the reasons why, at the end of my indulgence in music life, before I became a monk, that's why I used to like that type of music, because it was still, it was calm, because I couldn't think. So anyone who tells me, "Oh, I can't keep my mind still, it's always thinking," it's not. I challenge that. I refute it, because I know that you are still, but you just don't notice it. When you listen to music, or when you watch a sunset, or when you just watch the waves on the beach coming and going. We haven't got a beach here, we've got a little pond, a lake. Hopefully you've investigated, explored this place and found some really beautiful little places where you can just go to and just chill out. When you go to those places, it's so beautiful, so calm, so still. You become still. And you learn so much more about happiness and joy from that. The greatest happinesses you'll ever experience is when you're silent and things start to vanish and you get really still. I might as well mention this now, that when I was still a layperson, that same retreat, when I mentioned that I went on those walks every morning, and all I got to was seeing this most beautiful clump of bamboo. And I could only see that because my meditation was good. My mindfulness was strong. That was a really good retreat, that first retreat. And there was one day, please excuse me, but at that time I was a lay person enjoying sensory pleasures, only 19 or 20. I had a steady girlfriend. And I know sometimes people criticize me for saying this, but I don't know why you ever do, because I'm just being really honest and upfront that, we were having sex together, good sex. Why are you tittering? It's just part of life. I'm a monk now, I don't do that anymore, because I don't need to. I'll tell you why in a moment. And then it's just said goodbye to her in Gloucester, I think it was, and went over to my first retreat. And just a few days later, got blissed out. Total surprise. But what really hit me was this was better than sex. And I'm being honest with you. Sometimes people say, Ajahn, you shouldn't talk like that. Why? Because it was joyful, it was long-lasting, and it didn't have the emotional problems afterwards. Attachments and with another person maybe, the problems, you live in the world more than I do. But the fact that it was just so delicious and long-lasting and gorgeous and profound and meaningful, that's why sometimes I just wondered. One of my first thoughts after that was, why hasn't anyone told me about this before? That's what I tell you. That you can let go and disappear so much and have a bliss and happiness which is way above everything. And of course, don't think, oh, well, it's just indulging in pleasures. It's more than that. You have to disappear, first of all, to be able to get into those deep meditations. You have to let go. You have to vanish. You have to renounce, even temporarily, but it's still good fun. And all those things you hear, let go. Renounce, vanish. It's only temporary. You come back again afterwards, healthier and happier and wiser. But you have a wonderful time. So don't be afraid of things disappearing, because there's a huge reward. And you come back again afterwards, a much better, more powerful, more happy individual afterwards. And just to finish off, because it's almost 9 o'clock now, I'm sure that there's many questions you can ask this evening. And I do promise, Neha, when it comes to, I looked at the schedule, I only look at the schedule after I do it, that we're supposed to finish, 8:40? It was a meditation. 7:40, 7:30, the chanting, 7:40, the Q&A, and 8:40 we finish. Okay. This evening we'll finish at 8:40. Maybe. So at 8:40 you can go into the room and then turn the power off, so I can't talk anymore. So you can do some meditation. But I'm sure there'll be some talks about this afterwards. There's a story I was going to say and I've forgotten it now, so who cares? Well, never mind. So anyway, that's just the power of some beautiful meditation. And don't ever think that you can't do it. People sometimes feel that way. Oh, maybe Ajahn Brahm was born a monk. You can't be. These are things which happen to so many people, and sometimes, well, some of the people I've seen these things happen to, the most unlikely people. There he goes. Here goes another little story quickly. That time, years ago here, that I was, came in early. I was just hanging around helping out by the registration desk. And this guy came in. Didn't tell this, I don't think I told this one yet. I usually tell it every retreat. This guy came in, this big guy, maybe 6'3" or something, curly hair, scars, not scars, tattoos all over him, in traditional Australian dress. Singlet, shorts and thongs. He did not look like the normal person, a Caucasian, who would come on my meditation retreat. I couldn't recognize him, didn't know where he was from. And stupid Ajahn Brahm, I do some really stupid things sometimes. I said to him, sir, I think you've got the wrong place. Carnot Prison Farm is... That's what he looked like. He was supposed to be visiting one of his friends or something. He said, no, this is my name. I looked at the list. Oh, yeah, actually, you're in there. You're in cottage number, whatever it was. Well, sorry. So he accepted it. But then when we have these interviews, we're having interviews in the next couple of minutes. And when he came in for the interview, about 6 or 7 days into the retreat, or 5 days into the retreat, or something like that, and he started saying, oh, there was a really nice meditation. And you can see in his eyes that something had happened. You can see just a sparkle. You see the smile. You can't fake these things. You may try and come up to me and say, oh, it's a wonderful experience. You're not going to get away with it. But this one was real. He started to describe his experience, and it blew me away. He was just, he'd got into a jhana experience, really blissful states. And I asked him a few questions, he gave all the correct answers, and exactly just, that was a real jhana, well done. And that really blew me away, because of all the people in probably about 10 retreats, he'd be the last person I'd pick to get into a jhana. Totally the most unlikely person. And that taught me a lesson. And teaches you a lesson as well. You don't know who it's going to be. If anyone, or all of you. And I say that because sometimes people say, oh, I can't do this. That is what I call go-mayang. It's a word which I use a lot, go-mayang. It's a Pali word. Some people know what it means, go-mayang. Go means ball, B-U-L-L. Mayang means S-H-I-T. Bullshit. I'd only say it once. From now on, I'm just going to call it go-mayang. Each one of you has got what it takes. You're a human being. Not so you will do it, so you can do it. Just let go, disappear, renounce, stop. And see what happens, and don't be afraid. The most beautiful experience of your life. And I really mean that. I don't know that if you've been there, the birth of your first child, you've been there and just totally falling in love. You've been there, I don't know what the most beautiful experience of your life has been. There's one guy came over to Jhana monastery because he was a heroin addict. He really wanted to try and cold turkey. He gave him every possibility. I remember him come up to me once and say, I never ever thought I'd say this. I know that heroin is much better than sex. But when I got a deep meditation, he said, meditation is much better than heroin. So I never ever thought I'd say that. But it's true. Really amazing stuff. And it's on offer on this retreat. You can't pluck it, you can't shake it to make it fall. You've got to be perfectly still. Under the mango tree, open your heart and it'll fall straight in. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Excellent. Okay. So now we have these interviews. Please try and keep them to the right time because we're supposed to go off to Bodhinyana for more stuff at 10:20. So put your name down, keep it to the meditation if possible. Because I'm not an expert on your marriage,